Hello everyone, I'm just Topke and I'll be explaining the topic CSS box sizing properties, and I'll be demonstrating how each box sizing property works. So let's get started. And somehow to understand the concept of a CSS box sizing property, you should understand the two things. First, you should understand how the elements in CSS behaves when when box sizing properties is not being used. And then the second thing you should understand is how the element behaves when the CSS box sizing property is being used. So first, let me begin with the demonstration of how the elements behave when the box sizing properties is not being used. Alright guys, let me begin the demonstration here. So on the left hand side, these are the source codes. You can see the HTML file and the CSS file here, and on the right hand side is the output generated from these files. So first, in the HTML files, you can see that the CSS file is being linked here. So the way you embed the CSS file in HTML file, I don't have to explain it, right, because you have the idea. So let me directly go to the CSS file here, and you can see that I've used two boxes here. So in the first box is the one you see above here, so in that box you can see that the width is I've said is 200 pixel and height is 100 pixel, and in the second box as well you can see that width is 200 pixel and also the height is 100 pixel. But why do you think that the box size on the output side is different? The first one is obviously larger than the second one, right? So this is because, if you have noticed, in the first box you can see the additional property. Is that a property? I don't know. The padding is being used here. The padding is being used here, so that's why you can see that the box size differ, even though you have kept the width and height same for both the boxes. So to understand why the size of these two boxes differed, you should understand the formula the CSS box model uses to calculate the height and width of any element in the CSS. So the formula used to calculate width is width of the element plus padding plus border will give you the width that you see in the output section that you see in the browser. And for height also it is same. Height plus actual height of the element plus padding plus border will give you the height that you see in the browser. So now you will have the clear picture when I explain it here. So like I said that even though we have kept the width and height same for the both the boxes, I said that there is difference in the final output, right? So this is because when calculating the width of the first box, it is added in such a way that the width is being added as well as the padding and the border. So if you calculate the width of the first box, it is 200 pixel plus 40 pixel. It's not 20. You get the idea, right? Because 20 is on the both side. 20 on the right hand side, 20 pixel on the right hand side, and 20 pixel on the left hand side. So, and for border also it is 16. So if you total up these three guys, you will get the actual width, the total width of that box, which is 256 pixel. But in the second case, it's just the sum of 200 pixel and 16 pixel, which is just 200 pixel. So that's why you can see the size difference. So for height also it is same. Alright guys, now comes the second thing I said you should understand, that is how the CSS box model, CSS element behaves when box sizing properties are being used. So before I demonstrate, you should understand that you have to keep in mind that there are multiple box sizing properties, the content box, border box, inherit, and there are other, I think 4 or 5. So but the frequently used, most popular ones are content box and border box. So I'm in the first file that I've demonstrated earlier. So if we were to they said that it is said that by default there is a box sizing properties in CSS, but it is invisible to our eye. So to prove it, let me demonstrate here. So without box sizing properties, I've hidden here. If you were to refresh it, it's the same output that we saw earlier, right? But if I were to add another function called box sizing properties, and the type is content box, here you can see content box, there will be no difference, right? Because it said that by default there is box sizing properties and the default property is content box. So now there is another property called box border box. So now to demonstrate it, I'll jump to the next file. So here it is the HTML file. Okay, HTML file here and the CSS file here. So in that, let me change to border box. Okay, so I've changed it to border box, and if you were to refresh it, you can see that the box size of the box are same, even though we have the first box have additional function padding, but the second box doesn't have that function, but our final size of the box are same. And it doesn't mean that the padding does not play a role. Of course it does play a role, because it can be identified by the position of the text here. In the second box, because we have not used the padding function, you can see that the text is on the top left corner, but in case of second one, because we use the padding, it is quite I think in a different position than the second box. So you have to understand how this is working. So now let me explain the working of border box here. So we have two boxes here, but I'll be explaining only in regards to the first box, because the concept applies to all, no matter how many numbers of box you have. So we have a width of first box. We have an element with a width of 200 pixel. For now we will be focusing only on width. Okay, so we have a width of 200 pixel and padding of 40 and border of 16 times 2. You should understand it. 20 times 2, 40. That's why I'm directly saying 40 and 16 here. So in content box, what we saw is we are adding those 40 on top of 200, which totals up to 240. But in this case, instead of adding, we will be subtracting 20 from 200. 40 from 200 and 16 from 200. So which gives the difference of 144. So now this 144 becomes the new width of an element. And you may be wondering, if the width of an element is being decreased, the size of the box here does not decrease. This is because after the width is being subtracted, then whatever the amount you have given in the padding is also being added on top of that subtracted width. So again, first it is being destroyed and then it is being repaired again. So it's quite complicated here. So now after we get the new width, now 40 is being added on top of 144 and 16 is being added on top of whatever you answer get after adding those 40. So which gives the total of 200 pixel itself. So that's why the total size of the box does not change in case of border box. So here it also considers the padding, it also considers the border, but also it considers the width. But in content width, we saw that no matter how much number you give to that width, after adding padding and border is being changed, right? So that's the working of border box. And by the way, the working of content box is exactly same the way I explained earlier. So, like I said, by default the box sizing properties is there in CSS, right? And by default the property is content box. So the concept of the working of content box is exactly the way is exactly the same that I've explained earlier, so I don't have to explain it again. But the only thing you should know is how the border box works. So thank you for listening.